Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And actually, this is going to be my break. It's like pretty much the first time that I've kind of planted myself in one spot. So we're just going to call this relaxation. Me and my sister, we went out today. We were doing some thrifting. If you don't know, I am a reseller. Me and my sister have teamed up. I'm in the process of moving her entire eBay store over to my marketplace, and at the same time listing new items that I picked up and answering inquiries. I turned the volume down. I turned the volume down on my computer, but the notifications are still popping up. So I might get distracted just to see what's going on. But I will bring myself right back to the main trunk of the tree, right? I have trained myself to do that. And it's, something that most people who have, dynamic upbringings, we'll call that, where we become a little bit hyper vigilant. We tend to be moving all the time. We might even seem sometimes agitated. They call it ADHD. And quite often we get distracted by things. But, in that repetitiveness of just noticing when it happens, when you're getting distracted, like you see me all the time when the weather is coming down. Sometimes I'll even space out for like 5 seconds and I'll, oh, look at the rain or look at the snow, and then, oh, we're going live. And I have to bring myself right back in that moment. And we can lose ourselves, and I do it all the time. I call it, well, it happens to me when I go down side branches in topics, or when I'm talking and something that I say kind of catches my attention and catches my curiosity. And I kind of space out in the moment and I go right to that topic. And you'll see me, okay, Cindy, bring it right back. And that is in that practice, because I understand my limitations. And so lots of times we have to learn little tricks, right? Little habits to stay on top of things so that we don't, right, get distracted. And it's not something lots of us can control, because it's part of our makeup, again, in our upbringing sometimes, that we are hyper vigilant that way. And so, a bug flies by or crawls by, like we are on it, right? We see lights, we hear a noise, we sense something different in our environment, and we right, we zone right out on that. And quite often, like I said, we get distracted from what we are supposed to be doing in the moment, right? And it is in that practice. And I've been practicing for a very long time now, and I still don't always get it right. Again, those little tricks like turning down the volume so you don't get those sound notifications, right? But because, right, I still have my, well, I guess I can do that. And I don't have to worry. I just turned off my main computer screen here, right? Welcome, everybody. It has been a day. And like I said, in that reselling today, it is, and when you don't want to have people breathing down your neck, when you don't want to be under that thumb of somebody who feels, well, it's not that they feel, it's just that they have a sense and need to control quite often. And lots of times in those kind of aspects, right? Again, being somebody from a dynamic family, dynamic upbringing, being hyper vigilant because we focus and we don't only focus, sometimes we dwell, right? Sometimes we take things personally, right? And it really impacts us. And so we find that we have difficulties on holding on to jobs. Now, for me, for the most part of my life in my working career in hospitality and customer service, I have been able to maintain jobs for great lengths of times, right? Even a couple of them, 10 years. But we sometimes find ourselves in a state when change of staff comes in, policies, the way we feel about our jobs is not always right consistently the same right to the very end of that position. And sometimes in that disillusionment, and sometimes in that focusing on what other people think of us, that we lots of times we find it easier just to say bye bye and on to the next. Now this happened to me after the breakup of my marriage, and we all go through those states in our lives where we just don't care anymore. It's the end of the world. We'll never get to that state of happiness ever again. And we dig those holes deeper, 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 deeper. But I find in talking, in crying, and in time, these wounds scab up, these wounds heal. Even the scars disappear sometimes, and we start feeling better about ourselves. But in that state, when my marriage fell apart, I still had to put a roof over my head. But it was a roof with probably half a dozen different jobs in a span of maybe I'm going to say 6 or 7 years. But for somebody who, it's not that, a lot of these jobs that I loved, but sometimes out of necessity, we do cling to what puts the roof over our heads. And we will stay in positions that we're not happy in, that we don't like, or we're in networks in those jobs where we don't get along with everybody. And sometimes in our hypervigilance, in worrying about, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to keep my job and I'm going to get fired, that we end up stumbling over ourselves to do a good job. We'll multitask. We'll cross train in every position when we see people starting to get laid off over the course of the winter when work is a little bit in shortage. And so, in order to secure a position, we overextend ourselves, right? And we end up miserable because, you know, for myself, I don't mind working hard, but it's when you see other peers and team players that are making the same pay as you but doing just a minimal fraction of what you are desperately to hold trying to hold on to and putting that roof over our heads, right? And so we at that point become the poison in the company, right? And sometimes, and it's not always true that way, but our unhappiness contributes to that because in our negativity, we can pulse in that. And when we're open to that negativity, the only thing that can come in is negative. And then we find it's only in those minimal moments of acknowledgement. And that acknowledgement is usually not from your bosses or the company or with your peers. it's usually through your customers, right? Because in our hypervigilance, we overextend ourselves and we want to make people happy in what we do, right? I didn't turn the notifications off on my phone. I'm sorry. I have a phone. I have a basketball that's blowing up my phone. We picked it up for $3.99. I thought, it's a basketball. What do I know about basketballs? And I kind of checked and I said the brand that I had usually goes for $100 new. So I asked for $30 for this basketball. And within 20 minutes, my phone blew up. I just said, whoever comes first gets the ball. I'm really sorry, but I just got too many inquiries here and I can't, right? Hold my life together in the wait to see who's going to come by. So the first person to get here for the basketball gets the basketball for $30. Next time I have a basketball in that condition, I'm going to ask 50. I'm going to ask $50 for that. But today I was listing and making sales, and that's what is keeping it so that I don't have to put myself in that position where I'm going to have to take a job that possibly take a job just for a paycheck to put the roof over my head. That, I can go out there and look for positions that I am experienced and good at. But again, being that person that I am, right? I would much rather put that roof over my head through my own steam, right? My own steam, my own accountability to keep that roof over my head myself. And at the same time, it just kind of shows me as an entrepreneur. And if you've hung out with me for any length of time, I love the entrepreneurs, right? And that is a group that I would very much like to help, because entrepreneurs, for the most part, are in the same situation as me, being hyper vigilant, being, aware of our limitations and very sensitive to the feedback of the people we work for, the companies we work for, and right, and not to agitate the peers that we work with because we're all cross training and right, trying to hold our jobs, so we're like super duper employees, and that just ticks everybody off who just is looking for that free paycheck every 2 weeks, right? Okay, you guys, I'm just going to grab my cards here. And if you don't know, I have my own deck, and it's not the prototype, but I've written them out. I made three decks. The prototype went off to a friend. Hello, Eugene. Then I have one working deck with me, and then I have one deck that I've done and I've wrapped it in right to keep it in good shape, because that's the deck that will be sent off for production, right? And if that happens, well, they'll be up for sale. And the size is amazing. It's a 2 by 5 inch or 5 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and they feel so good in the shuffling, how they fit in my hand. And I don't have great big hands, right? And but they fit just nicely, I think. And this deck is just 54 powerful words, and sometimes, just little insights that I've picked up along the way. I've been at this for a while, so just little insights that I've picked up along the way in conjunction to the powerful word, right? So sometimes it's something I research. Sometimes it's the word itself has come across my path so many times that I felt like I really needed to work with it. And in that practice, I work with these words all the time, Monday to Friday. I try to grab a card, but sometimes, right, like what I'm doing now, I go into topics and I let that flow just kind of flow in the moment because, I'm not going to stifle myself. I'm not going to choke down because I understand, right? This is well, I'm a partner to those other parts of me that show up, right? But in all honesty, I'm not the star of the show. I'm just the presenter of it. So you guys, let's see what card we pulled tonight, right? Some of these cards I pull all the time, right? And some of these cards I have never pulled. And I trust that the word in the moment is going to be relevant. If not relevant to me in this moment, maybe relevant to me in the next 24 hours. And it's just a matter of taking note. Remember what I said about that hypervigilance, about the experiences, the conversations, right? Those adventures and those hiccups in our life that are always happening. And sometimes we pick up insights, and for the most part, we don't know. These things come across our paths all the time, but we don't pay attention because we're so zoned in to notifications. Okay, you guys, let's grab this card. We're just going to go into it for a little bit. I always say just for a few minutes. Sometimes I get into the topic. It goes for a while, but it is what it is. If it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. If it's a half an hour, it's a half an hour. And Eugene knows this himself because he's with me every single night. So much appreciated for your company, Eugene. Sometimes it's just me and Eugene here. Sometimes, right? And I'm cool with that. I'm comfortable with that because, again, in that hypervigilance sometimes, right? And this is what happens to me on Sunday nights. If you've never come and hung out with us, Chatters Live on Sundays nights, I have the most amazing crew over there. My moderators chat more than I do, but sometimes, right, I get distracted by the comments. So sometimes I am content to just have Eugene here with me, and it just keeps me on point, keeps me focused. Okay, here we go. Let it be relevant. Here we go. We're going to take this back one on this little pile here. And then when these do go into production, they will be on different grade thicknesses of paper. In the moment, I'm using a thick gloss photography paper, and it's working out very well for me. Okay, you guys, here's the card. Oh, this is a good card. I have not pulled this card yet, you guys. This is really incredible. Well, when we first did the deck, I used each card and we worked with each card every single day for a week. It took me a year to get this deck of 54 cards done, these powerful words. But since the decks have been done, I have not pulled this card. Today, we've got this word progress. And what did I write under there a year ago? Okay. Progress is just putting one foot in front of another in what we are trying to accomplish. And that's all it is, because we all have ideas, right? And ideas, that phrase is a dime a dozen because everybody can think of them, right? And especially creatives. If you're hanging out with me, definitely you're creative in some way, right? You have a beautiful imagination. You are handy dandy. Maybe you're even very artistic or very mechanical, or maybe you love woodworking, right? But progress is just putting one foot in front of another. And the thing is, when we don't do that, when we have these ideas, right? And we don't do anything about them, ideas come to me every single day. but they don't mean anything unless I move towards them, unless I take that action. And this is something, I have come to appreciate. And it was something, growing up, I was always a daydreamer. And I spent most of my time as, well, a daydreamer in the beautiful landscapes of life. For the most part, I was busy again in that hypervigilance, making sure everything's okay, that everybody is okay. And if they're not, I'm stumbling over myself to fix it, right? Progress is just putting one foot in front of another in what we are trying to accomplish, right? If you have an idea, if you have goals and dreams, right? Sitting on the couch with the remote control is just not going to do it. I gave my TV away, oh my goodness, years and years and years ago, and I do not miss it one bit. Now, if I was a guy and loved hockey and football, that might be a different story, or maybe not. Maybe I would just be going to the nearest bar where there was like a 20-foot big screen of the games, right? I've never been a drinker, right? But if I really love sports, I would suppose that I would have to have a TV, right? But to each one of us, we get to make these choices. We get to prioritize in our life what is important. Is it to stay at home and watch football every day, just one team to the next team from different levels of leagues and stuff? Like, if you love sports, you love sports, right? But for the most part, it's like hockey night in Canada, Monday nights. Well, it used to be Monday nights when I was a kid. It would be one or two nights a week. And then maybe you would participate live, right? Or go to a game live to see that. So there is so much time in our life that we actually waste, right? In just being immersed and entertained. And again, it has to be in our choices and that little bit of accountability, knowing your limiting beliefs, knowing what you're weak at, right? That if you have to give yourself a little bit of a boot in the butt, not not physically. I am like, for myself, I don't go for that. If I see it, I'm all over it. Only through my own experiences, I know, and my upbringing, and I know how that feels to, and the humiliation, especially because if I'm seeing it, it's in public, isn't it? And I would have to call it. I would have to call it out because I know how unkind it is. I know how damaging it is, right? And even talking about that hypervigilance and the ADHD and being distracted and things, you guys know that these are things that, even though I do have a few tricks up my sleeves on that, that it's not something I'm probably ever going to fully resolved, at least in this lifetime, in this experience that I'm having in this, right? So it's up to each one of us to put our foot down, to do that self parenting, right? To be our own boss. And like I said, seeing that we mentioned, that physicality of right, what doesn't rub us well, and what's right and wrong, when we should have a voice. Because I'm not one who is um, liable to turn the other cheek if I were to see something that was, well, just call it for what it is, abusive, right? And you know, we live in a world right now that these things are more prevalent than when I was growing up. and that physicality and that demoralizing somebody in their mentality, right? So that they purposely feel bad about themselves. And like I said, because I've gone through those experiences myself, I can appreciate the problems that arise. It's one of the reasons I have a couple of content creators that I personally absolutely love. And I trust them, and I appreciate what they bring to the table. Now, one of them is a young man. I don't know if he's a young man. He looks like a young man, right? Victor Otto. And another one is Dr. Gabor Mate. And the things that I appreciate so much about them is because they feel that in their lives or in their past lives that they personally might not have been good parents, right? And to be able to see that in yourself, right? To be able to appreciate that, you know, that there are some things that really can damage a child emotionally, mentally, even physically, right? In what we project on them, again, emotionally, physically, or mentally. And Victor is such an amazing dad. He has, I believe, 3 children. He has the most beautiful family. And I understand not having your kids online and stuff, but his content could really, really serve in that aspect of showing what proper parenting could be, because lots of people think they're amazing parents, and in their minds they really do believe this, but they don't always um, take those steps that, right, they don't actually know. Sometimes in good faith we try and guide our kids, but we don't know what actually hurts their feelings, right? That actually will cause, right, detrimental damage to them, things that they carry throughout their life. Okay, so why did I go off into a side branch on that? Let's go back to this. Progress is just putting one foot in front of another in what we are trying to accomplish. Okay, so it was only in the topic of what I was saying, and it was comparable. So again, I just trailed off onto another side branch, but because it came to my mind, I brought it to the table. And also it gives you an idea of some of the creators and some of the thought leadership out there that I do appreciate. And they come from different religions, different cultural backgrounds, different upbringings, some with issues and limiting beliefs as I do, and some of them are actually teachers, like literal professors and psychologists, and right. But for each person that I do um, uh, follow, is because they offer something to me. They offer me an understanding. They offer me a safe place to sit and participate, right? To be included in a conversation that will help to move me, and if not move me, something for me to kind of store and be able to, right, in reference to a subject that I might not be, or a limiting belief that I might not be an expert on, that I can say, oh, have you ever heard of Dr. Gabor Mate? Right? Have you ever heard of Victor Otto? Right? Like these are uh well, these are the gifts that come across my path. And right, and not always is something coming from my own mind and my own understanding, but lots of this is just those thought leaders out there, those experts in their fields who actually give me that understanding, that, oh my goodness, I never thought of it that way, right? Okay, you guys, let's just get back to this word already. I didn't slow down. Usually I try to slow down for 10 or 15 minutes before I come in live, but I'm still on that little bit of a spin mode of what I was trying to get accomplished today. But that's the idea, right? In what I want to accomplish, it wouldn't have been accomplished if I hadn't applied myself. If I just brought all my things that I thrifted today for reselling, if I brought them home and I just said, "Oh, I'll do that tomorrow." Well, my phone wouldn't have blown up, right? My phone wouldn't have blown up and I wouldn't have made arrangements in those sales that were coming my way. I might have lost out on that opportunity to make $30 on a $3.99 item, right? And that's the idea, just to put one foot in front of the other. Not tomorrow, right? Not an hour. Soon as that idea comes to you. Why? Because ideas are a dime a dozen. They really, really are. Okay, you guys. That's going to be my good cheer. I'm not doing anything else tonight. I am going to just partake in some more thought leadership, have myself a nice bubble bath, get in my pajamas, and call it a day. Right? I hope you guys have a great night. If you're just getting up in the morning, I hope your day is off to a good start and it just ends just as good. Okay, you guys. Have a great night, everybody.